All right. So, hello, everybody. This is another episode of SourceLife podcast. And we have this extremely great honor to have Tomer back to another episode. Hello, Tomer.
Hello, hello. Nice to be here again.
And we have also Nevo. Hello, Nevo.
Hey, Emil.
So today's episode will be about internal team versus external team. We will talk about our contributors and our internal team and how we actually could kind of compare those things and what is the benefits and just how we see all this kind of a structure and how everything goes in some kind of a synergy. So, Tomer, if you would just like to explain and to tell us in a few sentences on how and why you decided, guys, to build this company open source and how the community is actually benefiting you in doing this kind of a thing.
Right. I think to answer your question, I would look at community a bit in a different perspective. I think mostly you're not really creating a community as much as you are gathering one, which means people are already familiar with the problem space or their personal vision. They're already connected to this thing, whatever this thing might be, to an extent. And the only thing you do by building, so to speak, the community is you give them a proper name and a proper action items to work on whatever that was. And so when we started and we realized we're going to build Novo open source, we realized, okay, so we need to find quick validations from engineers, from the engineering community, and see whether they actually get the problem we're talking about. Because keep in mind that notification infrastructure isn't a known domain, it's something new. And so
Yeah.
we had to validate whether or not engineers actually get what we're trying to do. And so when we started building the project open source, and then we saw people joining the community by giving us a star, joining our Discord, creating issues, taking a pull request, we realized, okay, so definitely people all across all across are actually getting what we're trying to do. Both junior engineers, kind of want to be part of it because it makes perfect sense for them to be part of an open source community, or more seasoned ones saying, you know what, I've dealt with this problem. It's really hard to actually do that. I'm happy to have you here, and those are my insights trying to tackle the subject. So that to give you like the basic perspective on how and why we chose to gather a community around us.
Talking about our community and our contributor, I think as Novo's growth manager, I'm always trying to check the type of audience that join our community. And, by community, I mean Discord, GitHub discussion, issues, pull requests, and all the things around that. And we can usually see a lot of junior developers and students that want to start, put their name out there and want to contribute. But also we see a lot of seniors and junior are coming to ask for help about implementing Novo, and many other people that just want to be a part of the motion by just landing on our Discord, helping others, and sometimes putting out memes over the channels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I'm really interested to see what the future holds when we become like enormous. And I assume we will see a lot more of senior developers coming to contribute code and not only junior. What do you think about that?
I would look at it from a broader perspective, and I would ask, when you look at the engineering world, and there's this great, I think it's a YouTube session by Uncle Bob called "The Scribes Off." But inside that session, he's talking about the engineering world since I think like 1970s, 60s ish, when basically the software engineering world became a thing, right?
Yeah.
And he's stating that since then, and that's just numbers, just statistics, usually numbers of engineers across the world are doubling every 7 years. And
Really?
within our I would say standards, an engineer, software engineer, become a senior after roughly 5 years,
Okay.
which means at every single time, around 50 to 60% of the whole engineering community are not seniors. And that's just by numbers, right? And so it would be not, you can't assume any number higher than that on your actual community. I mean, specifically if you're building something that is rather generic. If you're going to solve a problem that is extremely specific for, I would say, I don't know, C++ core engineers, right? If you're going to solve an open source solution for something like that, you can safely assume most of your contributors will be people who are actually face this issue, which means seniors by design.
Yeah.
In our case, it's a very generic issue, which means a lot of people are going to face it. And then boiling down even into our current atmosphere right now, it's we're solving this solution using front end, back end, and very, I would say, trendy type of languages, Node.js, React, which means there are a lot of juniors out there looking to learn. And so, unsurprisingly, that's a big chunk of our open source community, and some of them even actually haven't faced the issue we're tackling, right? They just want to be part of something big, something new, something that is innovative, which is a big thing for engineers, innovation. Others, as you stated, seniors are actually there because they already faced the issue and they have their, that they have their own 2 cents, right? And I faced it, I want to contribute that. Or maybe they try to implement and say, oh, you got it wrong. This function isn't working properly, or this module isn't designed as it should be because I've already faced that. And here's my suggestion. And so as we're going to grow, it's safe to assume that we're going to attract more and more people, which means we're going to have more seniors working on that. And the other thing to this particular, I would say, not issue, but hindsight is the people who we are tracking is very much connected to the type of issues we're letting them solve, which means if you're going to open more in-depth issues and people are going to react to that, it's safe to assume that more and more seniors are going to be there because it's an in-depth issue. If you're going to create, light and breezy type of issues, I don't know, fix my docs, give me this other color, or how about translations? All of those are usually going to create more room for juniors to join.
Another thing that I wanted to touch is that as an open source company, we are actually helping people that are juniors, for example, that are currently just getting into the old developing world and trying to just gather and conceive this kind of in confidence, even to go, I don't know, to actually seek for an actual job. We are able to provide them with this kind of an experience of an open sourced company that we generating those kind of issues, and people are actually able to understand what they can contribute and what they can do. And even if they're doing something wrong or something not completely accurate or completely correct, there are people that much more experienced than them could give them some kind of a code review or maybe guide them in a direction that they could benefit from and learn from. So what do you think about that? I mean, how we could actually, how we are helping those kind of juniors and different kind of seniority levels of developers in our specific project?
I think there's two, basically two questions that you just asked. One
Probably.
is, how does being a public channel promote more juniors to join and promote more people to gravitate around Novu? And the other one is actually a bit more connected to the first or to the previous subject we were talking about, which is the audience. And so I would start briefly with the audience thing. Is keeping in mind that every single day more and more people joining engineering profession, and you have more and more programmers, developers, and a lot of them need more guidance.
Yeah.
Um, Especially if you're self-taught, it's really hard to measure accurately your level. And then building in open source communities kind of give you the ability to not only measure yourself, but actually learn from much more seasoned engineers. And if the in that regard, if the communication channels aren't open, you can never know what you're actually missing out. And a lot of times, if you won't see like this full range from simple questions up to very complex questions on those communication channels, it's hard for you to assume or have the ability to answer this question, which is a preceding questions for you to be able to ask something, which is, am I going to ask something that is utterly stupid?
Yeah.
Because if you're going to have the feeling that you're not going to ask any question. You're not going to be
Exactly.
part of the community, or at least not a vibrant one who's going to talk. And so once you see on public channels people asking all range of questions, and who are being conceived as the moderators or more seasoned contributors, or even the company in our particular manner, are acting and treating those questions professionally and saying, you know what, you need to do that, you need to do that, you need to read that, you need to learn that. Then you realize, okay, so they're actually answering questions by their merit and not based on, oh, I'm so high and mighty, I shouldn't answer that. No, I mean, they're actually
Yeah.
answering questions, so I can be part of it. I can safely grow. I have my safe zones here to ask important questions, to give advice, or yeah, to ask very low level questions. And I think for us to move the our internal communication out there in the public,
Hmm.
not only showing new potential contributors the way we talk and how we operate, it gives the community more context on what we're actually doing right now, which means
Yeah.
for seniors or for potential users, they know, oh, they're actually working right now on, whatever it is that's being developed or talked or designed right now. And then it gives them basically like webhooks. It gives them the opportunity to be part of, right? So, oh, I know about that. I want to
Yeah.
join.
We were talking a lot of our main audience, which is currently junior developers coming to contribute code. And what I have realized, and I just saw, is that a lot of the time they are going to the simple process of just going to our GitHub or something like that, and just may want to take an issue or something like that, or even
Right.
just going through the Discord. But they lack a little bit of knowledge, and sometimes they just want to do
Or a
something.
lot.
They
Yeah.
just want to do something like to contribute code, but they don't have the full context of Novo. They don't know exactly everything. They don't know maybe how the system works,
Right.
some architectural part. And what happens in those cases is that we see some ticket assigned to somebody, and sometimes it never gets solved. Sometimes
Right.
it's just running there for weeks. And I
Right.
think this thing can be actually fixed. But the main thing is that they all these contributors, they must go through some kind of an onboarding process. You can't just assign a task to them if they don't have the knowledge to actually do this. So I believe they need some kind of going with some other people, maybe from our engineering team or something like that, showing them the system if we do identify them as um, junior.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to give to assign issues to what we assume is going to be a developer who have an ample amount of knowledge into this subject, and we're assuming we're going to give some help. It's within the assumption
Yeah.
that we're going to put some time and efforts into helping that if they actually in need. But in order for us to be able to actually onboard contributors properly from all ranges, we're creating simple issues, a bit more complex, and some of them are really internal type of things that our internal engineering team would solve. And then for each one of them, we do have a generic onboarding for contributors, which means how you can install the project briefly, how you can test it, how you can check, how you should create the issues on GitHub,
Yeah.
how is the PR process, and all those are big part of learning how to be a contributor for open source. And then the other thing I want to mention here is that your ability to work with other people on the community, which means if I'm going to create this PR and then maybe not even the maintainer, but someone else from the community is going to give you to comment on that, you need to make sure you're, again, taking those comments by their merit, right? No one
Yeah.
is there's no one there, or at least on our case, we're trying to make it that way. No one is going to say, oh, you should use map just because. No, I mean, you should never use something just because. You should use it because it's better, and better is a very elusive subject. Better about
Like
what?
best practices and things like that.
Exactly. And so we're trying as much as we can to not only teach people on what we are assuming is a good practice, but we're trying to make sure people are behaving like, like decent human being and are being nice and happy to mentor and teach. And yeah, at
Yeah.
the end of the day, trying to build this product together. The one thing I want to add here is, and you said it correctly, Nevo, that sometimes, and it happens, someone takes an issue and a couple of weeks later it's not resolved. And
Yeah.
so with that, I would look at two things. A, that's open source contribution for you. At the end of the day, it is a contribution. No one owes us as a library nothing,
Yeah.
regardless of the fact that we're a company or not. It is what it is. I mean, if people can contribute on their free time, we are more than happy to get it and more than happy to give something back.
Hmm.
And yeah, we're trying to, as much as we can, to make sure the onboarding process is nice and easy and people know when they should contribute and what is the time frame and what are the deadlines for that. And in case that we're failing, and it does happen from time to time, we're publicly saying, you know what, we're going to need to take that issue, we're going to move it to someone else. And then if we don't get any responses, at the end of the day, we need to move it to someone else, then we do. But for the most part, we're trying to give an ample amount of time for people to actually write what they need and learn and grow from solving those issues.
Tomer, here I would like to actually hear your thoughts or your like train of how you see the employee onboarding in Novu, for example, because I know that you probably created this process with Dima and the previous, like the first people that joined to the company. So, how do you see it in your eyes right now?
So I think looking onto employee onboarding, the onboarding is a tool that should facilitate needs that are once a candidate signed their contract, right? And even just the signing is the first part of onboarding, basically. for our particular case, when you're joining Novo, most of your onboarding happens through Notion, Discord, GitHub, and some Google Meets. Um, and I mean, admittedly, a lot of that is due to the fact we are a remote company and not necessarily just a
Yeah.
big company. But I think for us, that's important because working remote does have very specific issues. I'm not going to elaborate right now, but uh, um, when the onboarding process is well written, well documented, and is able to grow with each new employee, and I think both of you kind of mutated some part when you joined. I asked you to do it. I'm trying
Yeah.
to ask everyone, if something is not working for you, go ahead, write it down because for the next candidate, we shouldn't deal with that again, right? I mean, I think we can share a very specific story about Nevo, but Nevo was the first employee working from Thailand, and when we talked and we, as part of our benefits plan, one of the things we're trying to give based on availability in country is meal vouchers on a monthly basis, right? And
Mhm.
so for you, Emily, in Israel, it was quite easy because the company was already onboarding in Israel and we have already everything set in place. But Nevo,
Yeah.
um, uh, somehow we missed that. And then a month later, after he joined, we have a monthly sync for more of our employment purposes. I was like, "How's your onboarding? Tell me that. Tell me about the onboarding process." And it was like, "So I didn't get my mailbox." I was like, "What? How does that happen?" Because what we realized, it took us almost 3 weeks just to ping pong with the Thai provider to only get that. So those
Is
are
there a
parts of
vault in Thailand?
No.
No. All right. Okay. That's
no.
sad.
But the thing is, that's a very specific story about onboarding. But I think once we document that, and once we as a company onboard in the Thai provider, we know for a fact for next employees in Thailand it wouldn't happen. I can't
Exactly.
necessarily promise that in a new country that we haven't onboarded, but what I can promise is because those are some of the learnings, now I can give Niveau's example or Niveau's onboarding example to another employee and say, you know what, I need you to help me out there, right? It's a new country. I haven't onboarded employees there. If there's some meal plan company operating there, let us know right now so we're able to make sure it happens as fast as we can.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't wait 3 months or 2 months before it happens.
By the
You
way,
know,
sorry, I just wanted to make a quick note that if someone who is listening to this podcast would like to get our insights and our knowledge and experience on those type of issues and all what we are documented, you could go to our website and there you could probably see our handbook. So there will be all written. Sorry, no.
so I want to put another edge on our employee onboarding. I was working for many companies before, mainly full stack developer and a team lead. And it's kind of a totally separate role in terms of how you run your day. Because as a full stack developer, I usually never talk to people outside of the company. And as a team leader, I had a lot of communication with many other people from outside the company, product manager, and so on. But here in Novo, we have a lot of full stack developers that's working during the day, but they're not just working themselves, they're also communicating with the entire community all the time, going on calls,
Mhm.
talking to other people. And this is something that not fit for every developers, because I know many developers that would not like to communicate with other people. And I think this is one of our core kind of values when we onboard people for Novo, that they are this kind of people, that they can communicate with everybody. They are not shy. They can go on meetings with other
Yeah.
people and stuff like that.
From what I heard from this kind of our discussion is that, of course, the topic and the subject of our episode is like internal team versus external team. But as we understand and how our company works actually, and how our open source community goes, is it's internal team with external team, and which means that um, we we kind of understand that the versus part is only with the onboarding process as I see it currently. That of course the we expect our contributors to sometimes be as efficient and like go with the issues as much as our internal team, sometimes like internal developers and our like core team, uh, according to our maybe coding guidelines and how we would tackle those kind of issues. But we sometimes tend to forget that our internal team had some process to do before they actually started to do the way the company wants it to go. So we also need to manage our expectations from our contributors and make sure that this kind of an onboarding process between our internal team and external team, which the external team are our contributors, will be as same as we can do it, because we want our contributors to feel the same confidence and the same kind of processes that our internal team is experienced, in order to feel that they are part of our community and our project, and to feel confident enough to actually contribute and bring value to it. So um, you guys have maybe something to add, Nevo, Tomer?
I think two small notes I'll give here. The first one is, I think for the most part, our technical onboarding for employees and contributors, if it's not the same, it's very it's very
Similar.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's only if it's not the same. And I think you kind of joked and asked about internal team versus external team. I think it's as a subject, it's interesting because it's two very different perspective and positions. At the end of the day, internal team are working on Novo or whatever project that is full time, and the time and vigor are only on that, and that's their life work at the time.
Yeah.
And For external team, most often than not, it's not the case, which means the cadences are a bit different, and then their internal knowledge is different. Not necessarily worse, right? I mean, external team usually have the ability to see much more, and they're able to
Hmm.
bring much more ideas and accelerate innovation much faster. But they are different. At the end of the day, you're right. It is not internal team versus external. It's internal team and ampersand, basically, and
Yeah.
external team. Because at the end of the day, we are working together and building the same thing. We're the same community. Nevo, on a daily basis, talk about our community, and a lot of the time, it actually means our team, because we are the same community. There's no actual difference.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that's my only note here. And then the internal team and external team are building the same community, building the same product, solving the same issues, and trying to get to the place where they're solving the same mission.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to see in the future that not everything is like an issue. I mean, right now we're talking about contributors coming to solve issues, but I want to see the future when senior developers are coming and creating features to solve and to add
Yeah.
stuff to the system, and not just solving some problem that we already have. So that will be amazing when that time comes.
Okay, so Thank you, Nevo. Thank you, Tomer, for this amazing episode. I think it really went great, and uh, I got a lot of value out of it. Of course, you guys who hear this episode could go to the show notes, and you can maybe get things much more digested later on our blog post. But again, Tomer, Nevo, I really want to thank you for being here.
Thank you so
Thank
much. It was
you.
amazing.